Hello everyone. Welcome back to Sora's Ghost Story YouTube channel. I wish you all an exciting time listening to today's ghost stories. Today we'll continue with the stories sent in by our viewers for Sora to narrate. If you have a ghost story you'd like to share, you can send it via Gmail or the Zalo number shown on the screen. Thank you so much. If you find this video interesting, please give me a like and subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell so you'll get notified when I upload a new video. Thank you everyone. And now let's get into today's story. Today's story is a rather mysterious one that took place in Kamau. The sender, Dui Sin, has titled it, The Mystery of the Purple Baba Shirt. Let's dive right in. This story was sent in by a young man. He said his hometown is in a riverside province of the Mekong Delta. Back in 2003-2007, his hometown was a very rural area, filled with dense trees, waterways, and rice fields. Houses were very sparse, far apart from each other. The locals mainly made a living by farming shrimp ponds. For those without land, they went fishing in the rivers. Although he didn't specify exactly which province he was from, Dewey guessed it was either Bac Lieu or Ca Mau. He described the scene in front of his house. Right across from his home there was a small river. On the other side stood a tiny wooden house roofed with palm leaves, built in the old style. It was so small, probably just enough for a family of 3 or 4 to live in. Everything began with that house. Since childhood, as long as he could, remember that house across the river had always been locked up tight, looking abandoned like no one had lived there for ages. Sometimes curious, he would ask his father about it. "Dad, whose house is that? Why is it always locked up? It looks so creepy and empty." That's when his father told him a story. His dad said, back then that house belonged to a couple with 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. But for some unknown reason, while the family was still living there, they kept falling sick one after another. It was strange. Whenever one family member recovered, another would immediately fall ill, and it was always something serious. The worst case was the daughter. Her eyes suddenly became red and swollen, bulging unnaturally. When her mother rushed her to Cho-Ray Hospital in Saigon, the father and son stayed home. But just a few days later, the father had to urgently take the son to the hospital as well. No one knew what illness he had. From that moment on, the entire family vanished. They locked up the house and left, never to return. Since then, the house had been abandoned for years. After the family disappeared, the adults in the neighborhood constantly warned the children, "Don't you dare go near that house, especially at noon or in the late afternoon. Stay far away." Behind the house was a very large yard, and for some reason the adults were extra strict about it. They used to say that an Ong Kay, a bogeyman, lived back there. Of course, being kids, they grew up scared by these ghost stories and warnings. The storyteller admitted that as a child he was also terrified. He never dared step into that yard or near the house. He would only get scared whenever the adults told ghost stories about the place, but by the next day, he'd forget again. One day, around 4 p.m., a group of kids in the village gathered with a small ball. After some discussion about where to play, they decided the only suitable place was that big yard behind the abandoned house. It was the best spot for playing soccer. Nowhere else was as spacious. In total, there were 6 boys and 2 girls. One girl named Dung, although female, loved playing soccer with the boys. The other, named Mai, didn't like soccer at all. Instead, she sat under a tree nearby, playing alone with her dolls. So in the end, 5 kids played soccer while Mai sat off to the side. While the kids were playing soccer, one of them accidentally kicked the ball into a shrimp pond belonging to Uncle Nam, the owner of the land. In fact, Uncle Nam was the one who had kindly given that poor couple a piece of his land years ago so they could build the house. It was never really theirs. When the ball fell into the pond, the 5 kids who were playing ran to find a stick to fish it out. While they were busy retrieving the ball, they noticed that little Mai, who had been sitting under the tree playing with her doll, was suddenly gone. At first, they thought she must have gone home early without saying anything. So they didn't worry much and just continued playing. They played until around 5:30 p.m. They didn't have watches back then, but they could tell the time because the evening TV drama always started at exactly 5:30. So when they heard the opening song from the neighbor's TV, they decided it was time to head home for dinner. But on the way back, they saw Mai's mother, Auntie, saw us rowing her boat along the river, frantically calling out, "Mai, Mai, where are you? Why aren't you home yet?" That's when the kids realized Mai had never gone home at all. She was missing. Shocked, they ran to the tree where she had been playing with her doll, but she was nowhere to be found. The adults of the village quickly gathered to search. By this time, it was already dusk, around 6 p.m. They asked the kids where they had been playing. The kids admitted that they had gone to the yard behind the abandoned house to play soccer. Upon hearing this, all the adults were furious and alarmed because they had strictly forbidden the children from ever going near that house. At that moment, the storyteller's father told Aunt Sao to stay at home in case Mai returned while he and some men prepared to search the area. It was already getting dark, and the storyteller himself, scared of being scolded, climbed up into the attic of his house to hide. That night, when the storyteller was still hiding in the attic, his father came home. His mother asked, "So, did you find her?" The father explained, "I followed the black dog. It kept barking under the stilt house." And sure enough, when they looked, they discovered little Mai curled up underneath the abandoned house's floorboards. In the Mekong Delta, most houses are built on stilts about half a meter above the ground to avoid floods. That night, Mai was found lying beneath the raised floor of the haunted house. Everyone was convinced she had been possessed by spirits. After that, all the children involved were beaten by their parents as punishment, and the incident was buried in silence. About a year later, unexpectedly, a young man named Cuong appeared. He unlocked the abandoned house and began living there. When the villagers asked, he explained that he was a relative of the couple who had once owned it, so he had come back to reclaim and live in the house. Because the place had been abandoned. For years, the structure was falling apart. Seeing this, some of the local young men helped him repair it, replacing the palm leaf roof, mending the wooden walls, and sweeping out the dust. The neighbors even pitched in to help restore the place. Inside the house, they found almost nothing left, just an old wardrobe, a rusty cooking pot, and a worn-out bed. The furniture was so decayed that some items were unrecognizable. At first, everything seemed fine. Cuong was a quiet, hard-working man. His main job was casting nets in the river near the house. On days when he wasn't fishing, he would help villagers with odd jobs, gathering fruit, repairing embankments, hauling soil. Because of his diligence, the storyteller's parents grew fond of him. His father often went over to chat and drink tea with Cuong, and sometimes Cuong would even give the storyteller small amounts of money, 2,000 or 3,000 dong, to spend. Strangely, after only a short time, Cuong began to change. He was no longer the hard-working, gentle man people knew. Instead, he became irritable, rude, and distant. Before, he had never touched alcohol, but suddenly he gave up working altogether, spending his days drinking. At night, instead of sleeping at home, he would stagger drunkenly to the front porch of the storyteller's house and lie there. Everyone could tell something was not right with him. Because of this, the villagers started avoiding him. No one wanted to talk to him like before. Seeing this, the storyteller's father went over and confronted him. "Look, if something's wrong, tell me. I'll try to help. You've changed a lot lately. Don't just shut everyone out. You're alone here. If you don't confide in someone, how are you going to live like this? Tell me what's going on." Hearing this, Cuong finally confessed. He said, "I don't know why, but for the past few weeks, whenever I sleep in that house, I can't rest. Every single night I feel like someone is standing at the door staring at me. Even in my sleep, I can hear a voice, an angry voice, that tells me, 'Get out of my house. If you stay, I'll kill you.'" At the time, the storyteller was still a child and didn't really understand, but he remembered noticing his father's expression change, like he already knew something like this would happen. His father then advised Cuong, "Before you sleep, put a knife under your pillow. Try that." Cuong did as instructed, and for a while the disturbances stopped. He no longer saw or heard the figure ordering him to leave the house. However, by then the villagers had already turned against him. They hated the way he had changed, always drinking, causing trouble at night, disturbing neighbors. He continued, drinking heavily anyway. Sometimes when the storyteller stayed up late, he could hear Cuong shouting and arguing inside the house as if he were fighting with someone. But everyone knew he lived alone. Still, across the river, the voices were muffled. The storyteller could never make out exactly what was being said, only that it was angry and frightening. The storyteller recalled that Cuong often shouted at night, but his voice sounded strangely thin and distant, like arguing with someone invisible. Things escalated during Tet of 2010, the year of the tiger. On New Year's Eve, around 8 or 9 p.m., while most of the villagers had already gone to bed early, the storyteller's family suddenly smelled a burning odor, like melted plastic, exactly like burning nylon bags. Worried, they searched their own house thinking maybe there was an electrical short or something burning. But no matter how hard they looked, they found nothing, though the acrid smell lingered. Eventually, they gave up and went to bed. But around midnight, just past New Year's Eve at about 12:13 a.m., they were jolted awake by shouts across the river. "Fire! Fire!" They rushed outside and saw Cuong's house engulfed in flames. The village men quickly gathered to try and put out the fire. The storyteller's father climbed onto their own thatched roof to splash water as a precaution, terrified that sparks carried by the wind might set their home ablaze as well, since all the houses there were built of dry leaves, easy to burn. Meanwhile, across the river, the blaze grew fiercer. People yelled, "Cuong is still inside." Through the smoke and flames, some women swore they could see Cuong sitting amidst the burning rubble. He wasn't trying to escape. He just sat there clutching a mysterious box tightly in his arms, refusing to let go. The storyteller's father shouted desperately across the river, "Cuong, snap out of it. Run out of there or you'll die." For a brief moment, it was as if Cuong awoke from a trance. His eyes flickered with clarity, and he whispered, "All right, all right." Then, like someone possessed suddenly regaining control, he bolted out of the collapsing, burning house, still clutching that strange box. By the time the fire was completely extinguished, it was almost 3 a.m. The storyteller's mother cooked porridge to feed the exhausted villagers. Meanwhile, Cuong, though saved from the flames, was in a daze, like a man wandering between life and death. He answered questions incoherently, as if he had no memory of what had just happened. What shocked everyone most was this. Despite sitting in the heart of the inferno, Cuong's body had not been burned at all, not even a blister. That was the strangest part of the entire ordeal. The next morning, Uncle Nam and the storyteller's father returned to the charred ruins of the house, searching for anything salvageable. There, among the ashes where Cuong had been found clutching the mysterious box, they discovered the same box intact. When they opened it, inside was a purple ba shirt and a pair of black trousers. Immediately, the villagers felt uneasy. Something about it wasn't right. They called for a spiritual master to investigate the house and the garments, hoping to finally uncover the truth about why the previous couple had abandoned the place years ago. The master inspected the ruins and examined the purple ao baba. He then declared, "This house is haunted by the spirit of a woman. She was brutally assaulted and killed here. The clothes in this box belonged to her, the victim, and the man who committed the crime was none other than someone from Cuong's own family." At that, the storyteller's father turned pale. He finally understood the root of the curse. He whispered to the master, "I know who it was, the one who violated and killed that woman. It was Cuong's grandfather." He explained further. Back in 1983-1984, his father, the storyteller's grandfather, had migrated here with several friends to reclaim land and settle down. Among them was Cuong's grandfather, who had brought along a woman named Thao, a distant relative, whom the storyteller's father respectfully called Aunt. Thao was unmarried, living quietly. With them, the storyteller explained that his grandmother had once invited Aunt Thao to join their group because she was resourceful and hardworking. Together, they traveled to this wild land to clear fields and build a new life, just like the scenes in the Southern Land film. Each person went searching for land to claim, but Thao, being a woman, was too frail to cultivate a plot of her own. Instead, her role was simply to cook meals and prepare water for the men. Cuong's grandfather and the storyteller's grandfather agreed to help her clear land while she took care of them in return. However, because they all lived so closely together, temptation arose. One day, Cuong's grandfather developed lustful intentions toward Thao. In an act of cruelty, he violated her. Worse still, after the assault, he ended up killing her. That day, he confessed to the group, "I accidentally killed Thao." Everyone was shocked, furious, but also trapped. This was unclaimed frontier land. There was no government nearby to report the crime to. And since he was kin, they decided to bury the crime in silence, keeping it hidden to protect family ties. But while they could bury her body, they could not bury her spirit. Thao's restless soul lingered, full of pain and rage. She haunted Cuong's grandfather endlessly. Desperate, he sought help from a sorcerer, who sealed her spirit by writing a talisman, folding it inside Thao's clothing, and locking it away. Inside a wooden box, the very same box that had been discovered after the fire. Yet Thao's spirit was too powerful. She had died young, unmarried, and a virgin. Her resentment and energy were exceptionally strong. Over time, she broke free from the seal. From then on, the entire village lived under her shadow. Even Cuong's grandfather, before his death, had warned, "Never set foot near that place again." And the storyteller's father carried on that warning, forbidding his children and the village youngsters from ever playing near the cursed house. After your father had recounted everything in detail, the master sighed and explained, "Thao's resentment is immense, her hatred boundless. But when Cuong's grandfather passed away, much of her anger subsided. After all, her tormentor had already died. The true reason she rages now is because that talisman remains locked inside the box with her clothing. It traps her, preventing her from reincarnating, yet gives her no way to communicate her suffering. That is why her hatred has flared up again. Because of this, Thao's spirit cursed Cuong's relatives. The couple who once fled the house were also descendants of Cuong's grandfather. Illness after illness struck them until they abandoned the place. And now, she had turned her wrath toward Cuong himself, attempting to burn him alive in his own home. Once the truth was revealed, the master declared, "Enough. I will take Thao's spirit, bring her to the temple, let her hear the sutras, and guide her toward reincarnation." He carried away the box along with the purple blouse, the black trousers, and the talisman. From that day forward, people in the village no longer feared passing by the cursed house. Where once their skin would crawl and chills ran down their spines, now everything felt normal. Peace returned to the village. But for Cuong, peace never came. From that night on, he seemed broken, his mind shattered. He muttered to himself, sometimes laughing, sometimes ranting, often whispering the same names over and over again. When asked, the elders of the village realized those names belonged to the men who had once helped Cuong's grandfather cover up Thao's murder decades ago. It turned out that Cuong's grandfather had not acted alone. Several men from that expedition had assisted in silencing Thao forever. Cuong, cursed with their sins, repeated their names as though haunted by their ghosts. The storyteller added, "Now it makes sense why, though Cuong's grandfather once claimed this land, his descendants like Cuong could never settle here. After the old man's death, Cuong's father sold all the family's land to Mr. Nam. That is why Cuong drifted from place to place, never able to call this cursed land home. After that, Mr. Nam allowed Cuong's relatives to stay temporarily on his land and build a small house there. So, through this story, the narrator wanted to send us a meaningful message, one that Sora has often repeated. The realm of the spiritual is something mysterious, difficult to explain, and even modern science has yet to fully understand it. When you hear stories like this, whether this one or others, you may choose not to believe. No one forces you. But disbelief and disrespect are two different things. It's fine not to believe, but mocking or insulting the spiritual world is dangerous. Whatever the case, it is always wiser to be cautious than to let things go too far, for the consequences may be unimaginable. Even now, the image of that burning house remains etched in the narrator's memory, as if it happened yesterday. At the time, they were only 9 or 10 years old, yet the memory is unforgettable. Ultimately, the core lesson of this tale is clear: you reap what you sow. The evil deeds of one generation can bring suffering to those who follow. As the old saying goes, when the father eats salt, the child will thirst. And with that, this chilling yet meaningful story comes to an end. Before we finish, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sora's YouTube channel. And if you have thoughts about the story, feel free to leave a comment below. Stay tuned for the next haunting tales to come. Goodbye, everyone.